High school wasn't just a place. It was a battlefield dressed in linoleum floors and fluorescent lights, and I was the easiest target on the field. I didn't speak much. I read a lot. I walked with my shoulders hunched and kept to the corners of classrooms. And that was enough. That was always enough to make me the punchline. There was one guy in particular. You know the type, captain of the football team, loud in the hallways, magnetic in that dangerous, careless way. He had this swagger like the school owed him something, like the world would just bend for him when the time came. And maybe it would. He had a smile that could disarm a teacher and a tongue sharp enough to slice me open in 4 syllables or less. Fag. Princess. You walking with that twitch on purpose? Don't drop the soap. He had dozens of lines, a new one for every day. And the worst part? He delivered them like a comedian testing his material. His friends were the laugh track, the hallway his stage. And me? I was the punchline. Started small, always does. A loud comment here, a paper ball in the back of the head. My books accidentally knocked out of my hands. But small becomes ritual, and ritual becomes truth. Teachers saw it sometimes, but they'd pretend they didn't. Or they'd smile nervously and say, "Boys will be boys." Like that explained why I stopped speaking in class altogether. Like that excused the bruises I never told anyone about. No one ever stood up for me. Not once. I remember one morning walking to homeroom. I had just come from the library, my safest place. I'd been rereading The Picture of Dorian Gray for the 5th time, not because I fully understood it, but because it made me feel less alone. As I turned the corner, there he was, leaning against the lockers with his friends. I froze. It was instinct by then. I could sense him before I even heard his voice. "Well, if it isn't the rainbow freak," he said, grinning. I tried to move past him, eyes down, but he slammed a hand against the locker next to my head. Not touching me, just close enough that I flinched. His friends laughed like it was a magic trick. "Hey," he said, voice suddenly soft. "What's that look? You got a crush or something?" The laughter behind him erupted. I didn't say anything. I just picked up my pace and kept walking. I remember feeling like my chest had been scooped hollow. They followed for a bit, mocking my walk. One of them mimicked me with limp wrists and exaggerated hips. I wanted the floor to open. I wanted the day to end. I wanted out. But I never cried in front of them. Not once. That became my only form of defiance. I saved it for after school, behind the dumpster by the science wing, or in my bedroom, where silence could hold me better than people ever did. At night, I'd lie awake and imagine another life. A life where I lived in a big city, had friends, laughed at things that weren't cruel, woke up without dread curling in my stomach. In those dreams, no one knew me, and that anonymity felt like peace. I wasn't brave. I didn't punch him. I didn't report him. I just survived, quietly, and sometimes I wondered if that was enough. There was one day sophomore year. I remember it clearly. I had stayed late working on a project for the art club. The hallways were quiet, almost peaceful. I thought maybe I could make it out without running into him. But of course he was there. He was alone that time, sitting on a bench outside the gym, scrolling through his phone. When he looked up and saw me, I panicked. But he didn't say anything, just watched me walk by. For a second, I thought maybe he'd grown tired of the game. Maybe it was over. And then, right as I reached the doors, he called out behind me, "Hey, you'll never be anything, you know that?" I froze just for a second, then kept walking. But something in me cracked open that day. He didn't need fists to break people. Words were his weapon, and I had let them bury me. But even then, deep beneath the fear, something in me whispered, "One day, I'll be someone he has to say sir to." I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to humiliate him. Back then, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to disappear. After graduation, I left that town like it was on fire. No godbis. No Facebook friends.
No reunions.
Just a one-way ticket, a duffel bag that smelled like detergent, and a list of things I'd never let anyone call me again. The city didn't know me, and that was the point. It didn't care how I dressed, how I spoke, how I moved. Swallowed me whole, sure, but at least it didn't chew. I worked my first job at a call center on the graveyard shift. 10 hours of fake smiles. Let me check on that for you. And counting seconds between calls. I slept in a room the size of a closet and split it with a guy who snored through his dreams of acting. On weekends, I worked the register at a thrift store. I learned how to fold clothes with one hand and how to hide tears with the other. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I didn't go to college right away, couldn't afford to, so I taught myself instead. Every night, I sat in front of a second-hand laptop that wheezed like it had asthma and watched free YouTube tutorials on coding. HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I learned how to break things and fix them, how to build something from scratch. I failed more times than I can count, burned out more coffee pots than I can remember. But there was this feeling, like something was waiting for me at the other end of all this. Not success, not money, just the version of me I had been running towards since high school. I finally scraped together enough to join a coding boot camp. It wasn't fancy. The walls had peeling paint and the vending machine was always broken. But it changed everything. I met people who didn't look through me. People who asked questions, who listened when I spoke. I felt seen. One of them was Jordan, scrappy, smart, always thinking 5 steps ahead. We hit it off quickly. Not romantically, just soul-aligned. We worked well together. Started freelancing small projects. Websites for cafes, apps for local events. Then one day we built something just for us. A tool that helped gig workers track income across multiple platforms. It was clunky, ugly even, but it worked. That's how the startup began. We called it GrindTrack, partly as a joke, partly because it felt like our lives. We launched it with no funding, no press, and no backup plan. Just a Twitter account and hope. First, it was slow. Dozens of downloads. A few reviews. Then it spread. Word of mouth. Rede de triais.
Blog mention.
Suddenly, we had thousands of users. Within 2 years, we had investors calling us. We built a small office space downtown. Exposed brick, bad lighting, too much coffee. Hired our first team. Launched new features. I learned how to lead. How to fire gently. How to speak with confidence even when my hands shook under the table. And yet, through all of that, I never once looked back. I didn't search for old classmates. Didn't peek at what the bully was doing. It wasn't out of anger. I just didn't need to anymore. I had built something that mattered. Something that paid people's rent. That helped struggling folks take control of their finances. That gave me, and others like me, a sense of agency in a world that constantly tried to strip it away. Every win felt like proof that I wasn't weak, that being soft wasn't a flaw, that I could bend the world without breaking myself. I thought the past was buried, truly. And then, last week, an application landed on my desk, with his name on it. First, I didn't believe it. I read it twice. Same first name, same last name, different city.
Différents résumés.
But the photo was him. Older, a little worn, but him. The same smirk, dulled now by time or life or maybe just the weight of not being the golden boy anymore. He had applied for a mid-level operations role. Nothing fancy, but the cover letter was humble, desperate even. "I'm looking to rebuild my career," he wrote. "I'm open to learning and ready to prove myself." There was no mention of our past, of course. No sign that he recognized the name at the top of the company he applied to. But I recognized him. Instantly. It hit me like a cold wind through a broken window, sharp and sudden. The hallway echoes. The locker slams. The laughter. I stared at the screen for a long time. This man, the same one who shoved me against lockers and called me names, was now asking me for a chance. I didn't know what to feel. Power? Anger? Vindication? No. The first thing I felt was silence. A deep, aching silence that had waited years to be filled. All the versions of me. The kid crying behind the science wing, the teen clutching library books like armor, the young adult coding in the dark. They all leaned in at once. He wanted a job. At the company I built. In the world I created. With the name he once mocked printed across the very top of the letterhead. That's when I realized something. He knocked. and now I got to decide whether or not to open the door. And then, last week, an application landed on my desk, with his name on it. I scheduled the interview for Monday at 9 a.m., not because I had time, I didn't, but because I wanted to see him in the morning light, when nerves were raw and polish hadn't kicked in yet. People are most themselves before noon. He arrived 10 minutes early like a good applicant should. Hair slicked back, button-up shirt tucked in too tight around a soft stomach that hadn't seen the gym in a while. He carried a cheap leather briefcase and the weight of someone trying not to look desperate. I watched him through the glass door as he waited in the lobby, hands fidgeting, eyes bouncing between the receptionist and the floor. I wondered if he had any idea, if my name had triggered anything, if he'd Googled the company and noticed the face on the About Us page. Apparently not. When I walked in, he stood quickly and extended a hand. His grip was firm, too firm, like he was trying to prove he still had something left in him. "Hi," he said. "Thanks for meeting with me. I'm really excited about the opportunity." I smiled, professional and measured. "Glad to have you in, Logan." He didn't flinch at the sound of my voice. Didn't blink. Nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition. So either he truly didn't remember me, or he had learned, like most bullies do, how to erase the names of the people they hurt. We walked into the small conference room. He looked around, clearly impressed. The framed tech awards, the sleek chairs, the view of the skyline from the 12th floor. I let him soak it in. "I've read a lot about GrindTrack," he said. "Really innovative stuff. I wish I'd found it earlier, honestly." His voice had changed. Deeper, slower, but still that same tone, that natural confidence that once came from being untouchable. Now it felt forced, stretched over cracks he didn't want to show. "So," I said, sitting across from him, "tell me what brings you here." And that's when the story poured out. He'd been working steady jobs until COVID hit. Got laid off. Tried freelancing but didn't have the connections. Girlfriend left him. Moved back in with his mom for a while. Then his truck died. Credit card debt piled up. He's been sending out resumes for weeks, but nothing stuck. "I'm just looking for a chance," he said. "Somewhere I can rebuild. Start over." The irony hit like a slow drumbeat in my chest. This man who made sure I spent 4 years of my life trying to shrink myself down to nothing, was now sitting across from me, trying to make himself look small, harmless, humble. I kept my tone steady, my face neutral. Years of practicing that expression made it easy. "Your resume's solid," I said. "Why'd you leave your last company?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "They were downsizing. Honestly, I think they just didn't see my value anymore." I nodded slowly. "That's tough." He looked relieved, like he'd passed some invisible test. I glanced down at the notes I wasn't taking. He didn't remember me. He really didn't. Or if he did, he'd decided to pretend otherwise, which frankly was worse. Because it meant he saw my face, remembered the slurs, the shoves, the hallway jokes, and decided I wasn't worth acknowledging. I leaned back slightly, just enough to shift the power dynamic. "I have to admit," I said casually, "when I saw your name on the application, I had a weird sense of déjà vu." "Oh yeah," he said, adjusting in his seat. "Maybe we crossed paths at another company?" "Maybe," I replied, watching him squirm just a little. His eyes flicked to my nameplate on the table, then back to me. Still nothing. I stood and walked to the side table, poured a glass of water, and slid it across to him. He took it, murmured a thanks, and looked down into the glass like it might give him answers. That's when I said it, soft, polite, surgical. "Did we go to school together?" His eyes snapped up. Something flickered. Not full recognition, not yet, but a crack in the mask. His brow tightened just slightly, and I saw him doing the mental math. Scanning my face. Digging back through the years to try and place me. I didn't say anything else. I just let the question hang there, patient and sharp. I offered him water, and asked, "Did we go to school together?" He stared at me for a long second after I asked about school. Then he gave a little laugh, nervous, hollow. "Huh, maybe. I mean, I went to Kennedy High, class of '08. "I did too," I said evenly. His smile twitched. Small world. I didn't respond. Just let the silence sit between us like something thick and old, like smoke that never really left the room. He took a sip of water, tried to reset. Sorry if I don't remember exactly. Those years were a blur, you know? I leaned forward just slightly, hands folded on the table. My voice was steady. I didn't raise it. I didn't have to. You once dumped a smoothie into my backpack. Orange banana. Ruined my books. He blinked. You shoved me into a locker the day before yearbook photos. My collarbone was bruised for a week. His jaw tensed, eyes darting to the door, then back to me. You used to call me the fairy with the broken wing. Said I walked like I'd fallen out of a pride parade and landed wrong. He opened his mouth, but I held up a finger. You used to imitate my voice in front of your friends. Said I talked like a girl with a sore throat. Once, you told someone I probably practiced kissing with my pillow and named it Brad. Color drained slowly from his face. His shoulders sank. Whatever confidence he had walked in with was bleeding out through the seams. He started. I didn't realize that was you. I know, I said. You never did. There was no venom in my tone. Just clarity. Like I was reading a weather report. Cold front. Heavy storms. Dress accordingly. He swallowed. Look, wow. I don't even know what to say. Say the truth, I said. He shook his head slowly, looking down at his hands. I was an idiot back then. We were all jerks in high school. Not all of us, I said. Some of us were just trying to survive it. Silence again. He looked up. His eyes were red now, glassy.
I'm sorry.
I really am. I don't remember half of that. But I believe you. And I'm sorry. I nodded once. I wasn't interested in watching him beg. That wasn't why I said it. He added quieter. I didn't know you were gay. I met his gaze. Calm. Certain. You didn't need to. He flinched. Not physically, but internally. Like the words hit deeper than he expected. I wasn't trying to make your life hell, he mumbled. I was just trying to be funny. I didn't mean it like that. But it landed like that, I replied. Every single time. He dropped his eyes again. Shame can be loud when no one speaks. I have a kid now, he said softly. A little boy. He's 6. Sometimes I look at him and wonder what kind of man I was back then. Who I'd want him to be. I nodded. Then maybe this is useful. Maybe this is part of becoming that kind of man. He looked at me like he wanted permission to feel forgiven. Like the apology should be enough to wipe away what he didn't remember. But I wasn't his confessor. I wasn't here to give him peace. I was here to hold a mirror. What he saw in it, that was up to him. He exhaled. If I could go back. You can't. More silence. You just needed me to be weaker than you. His eyes flicked up again, and he nodded, slowly. Yeah, he whispered. I think that's exactly it. There was no pride in his voice.
No excuse.
Just a tired kind of truth. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small in that memory. I felt like I had finally grown tall enough to reach it, and set it down. You just needed me to be weaker than you. After the interview, I sat alone in the conference room longer than I needed to. The air still felt heavy with his voice, his apology, his desperate attempt to rewrite a past he barely remembered. I closed my laptop without saving my notes. They weren't real notes anyway. Later that evening, I vented to Jordan, my co-founder, over takeout containers and half-warm coffee. I don't owe him anything, I said. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Of course you don't. But that's not really what you're asking. I sighed, leaning back. What am I asking then? If you're strong enough to do the opposite of what he did to you, Jordan said. That's what this really is, right? I didn't answer, because honestly I didn't know. All I knew was that my phone kept buzzing with messages from our hiring lead. Any update on the ops candidate? And every time I saw his name in that email thread, I felt like I was back in that hallway again. Cornered, mocked, erased. He doesn't deserve to work here, I muttered. Not after what he did. Jordan nodded. Maybe, but you also said he's qualified. He is. And he apologized. He did. Jordan took a sip of his drink and said, casually, so what's more powerful? Shutting the door in his face? Or making him walk through it and prove who he is now? I stared at him. Letting him in doesn't make you weak, he continued. It makes you the one who gets to choose. You get to decide what kind of man you are now. I stayed quiet for a long time after that. That night, I read over Logan's application again. Then I opened his LinkedIn. He'd bounced around a few jobs. Never stayed long. Nothing impressive. But nothing terrible either. Just faded. I tried to picture him here, in our office, sitting quietly during meetings, learning from people younger and smarter than him, reporting to a team he once would have mocked without blinking. I imagined him seeing my name on a company-wide Slack message, my photo on the wall, my voice giving keynotes. Would it break him? Would it humble him? Or would he simply adapt like he always had? I didn't know. But I did know this. I didn't want him to disappear. Not this time. I wanted him to see. So I opened a blank email. Subject: follow up on interview. Body:
Ilogun.
thanks for coming in this week. We'd like to move forward. Come in Monday. Let's see what you've got. Sent. I stared at the blinking cursor for a moment. Then I closed my laptop and turned off the light. I wasn't the kid in the hallway anymore. I was the one holding the keys. He showed up on Monday at 8:57 a.m. Not too early. Not too late. His shirt was pressed, his posture straight, but his eyes scanned everything like he was trying to memorize the rules before breaking any. He looked smaller in our office than he did in high school, or maybe I just wasn't looking at him from below anymore. I shook his hand without ceremony and introduced him to the team. This is Logan. He'll be working in ops support. If he asks questions, answer them. If he doesn't, check in anyway. No one batted an eye. To them, he was just another mid-level hire. To me, he was a test I didn't know I'd been preparing for all my life. The first week, he was quiet. Too quiet. He kept his head down, took notes in meetings, and stayed late without being asked. He avoided small talk, didn't join the group lunches, didn't even try to impress me, and I never made it easy for him. Not cruel, just professional, blunt, distant. I assigned him projects that required collaboration, something that forced him to listen more than speak. I paired him with interns half his age. I reviewed his weekly progress like I would anyone else's, direct, efficient, emotionless. He never once brought up the past, and I never gave him the relief of pretending it didn't exist. But I didn't sabotage him. I didn't micromanage or embarrass him or set traps. That would have made me just like him. Instead, I gave him space to work, to flinch, to learn. And I watched. There's a certain kind of justice in watching a man like him exist in a world where his charm no longer gives him shortcuts, where no one laughs at his half-jokes, where being loud doesn't make you right. By week 2, he'd stopped trying to prove anything. One morning, I passed by the break room and saw him washing his own mug in silence. No performance, no posturing, just a man doing his job, a small, ordinary moment. It was beautiful. In the 3rd week, he presented a workflow update that genuinely helped reduce task delays. Clean, practical, thoughtful. I nodded in the meeting. Good work. He blinked, like the praise shocked him more than a slap would have. By the 4th week, he had settled in. I started noticing the shifts, the way he took feedback with quiet humility, the way he asked for clarification when he didn't understand something. Once, I heard him correct a newer employee gently when they made a dismissive joke about another guy's floral shirt. He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't need to. I didn't befriend him. We didn't bond. There were no hallway heart-to-hearts, no sudden moment where he broke down and thanked me for giving him a second chance. That's not how real life works. This wasn't a redemption arc. It wasn't forgiveness. It was consequence, quiet and lasting. Letting him in wasn't about kindness. It was about clarity. I didn't want to ruin him. I just wanted him to understand. One afternoon, I walked past his desk and noticed a sticky note on his monitor. It read, in neat handwriting, "Don't talk. Do the work. Let them learn who you are." I didn't know if he wrote that for himself or for someone he used to be, Either way, I left it there. Sometimes I caught him looking at me during meetings. Not nervously, not with guilt, just awareness. Like he saw something in me now that he'd never bothered to see before. Like he was learning who I'd become the same way he learned the company systems. Slowly, without shortcuts. And that was enough. Because the truth is, I didn't need him to fall apart. I didn't need an apology letter or a dramatic confession or even closure. I just needed to walk into the room each morning, take my place at the head of the table and lead while he followed. That was the justice. That was the peace. I didn't need him to suffer. I just needed him to see who I became. A few months later, I took a trip back home for a tech panel at the State College, the kind of event I used to dream about from the back row of my high school classrooms. It was fall. The trees wore red like pride. The air smelled like books and beginnings. After the panel, I had a few hours to kill, so I rented a car and drove past my old school. Kennedy High. Same brick walls. Same sagging flagpole. Same cracked sidewalks where I used to fake stomach aches just to avoid gym class. I parked across the street and sat there for a minute, engine off, just watching. A group of kids walked by, laughing, shoving each other in that harmless, chaotic way that didn't sting. One of them wore glittery nail polish. Another had bright pink headphones. No one said anything cruel. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The world had shifted. Maybe not completely, maybe not fast enough, but it had moved, and so had I. Back at the office the next day, things were normal. Logan was in his corner, doing what he did best, working quietly. He still avoided my gaze when we crossed paths, but the energy between us had settled. It wasn't tension anymore. It was awareness. One of the junior designers, a guy named Luis, had been going through it lately. His boyfriend left. Rent was late. He'd cried in the break room last week after a tough client call. Logan walked by and handed him tissues. No words, just presence. People change. Sometimes. I sat in my office that afternoon, watching the city move outside the window. My name was etched on the glass door behind me. Not out of ego, but proof. Proof that I had survived the fires built to burn me. That I had built something not in spite of who I was, but because of it. For years, I thought revenge would taste like slamming doors and mic drops and power plays. But now I knew better. Revenge, the kind that lasts, tastes like peace. Like walking into your own company every morning and never having to flinch. Like building a life you don't have to escape from. I still don't forgive Logan. Not fully. Maybe not ever. But I don't carry him with me either. He stays where he belongs, in the background, doing his job. Learning, I hope. Failing sometimes. Trying. And me? I lead. I mentor. I show up to conferences in crisp suits with sleeves that don't hide anything. I fund scholarships for queer kids in STEM. I pay interns well, even when the board raises their eyebrows. I sit at tables I wasn't invited to, and build new ones for those coming next. I walk into rooms with my full self now, voice, stride, softness, edge, and I don't apologize for any of it. Not anymore, because success was always the plan. Not to prove something, not even to fight back, just to exist so fully, so confidently, that no one like him could ever make someone like me feel small again. And every time he clocks in, every time he hears my name at a meeting, every time he submits a report with my initials in the approval box, he remembers, maybe not every word he ever said, but enough. And that's all I ever needed. Because success was always the plan. Not to prove something. Not even to fight back. Just to exist so fully, no one like him could ever make someone like me feel small again.